Looks like I'm going to start right on time, so you better get in here. It's 8:29. I don't have the camera on. Either does anybody.
Yeah, yourself muted.
Everybody. You guys want to turn around? All the way off.
Right next to the ground. Put it on the color. Yeah. Remind people.
Oh, it's there.
For those of you in the audience, we've got a few folks that are still registering, signing in, so we'll give them a chance to sign in.
Just so you know, the recording is on, so we're recording it because it's easier, so I don't have to put their screens and logistics. So we are recording, and Jack will let everybody know that. You're good to go. You're ready for it.
Good evening, everyone. Jack Blackwell, I'm the state parks superintendent for the Prince Sound region of the state park system. We're here this evening to provide an update on the Kasilof River Drip Boat Retrieval project. And We have some folks are joining us by Microsoft Teams. And let me just kind of go over a few housekeeping items, and then we can move it into the agenda and get on with the update. To start with, we are recording this evening's meeting. So I just want to bring that to your attention. It will be posted on the project website, which is on the State Park website, and I'll have that information for you at the end of the presentation. You can access that website. We have about a presentation that's probably about 20 minutes or so that we'll cover. So hold your questions until I'm done with the presentation, and then we'll open it up for questions. The restroom facilities are basically just behind you in the hallway. Exits, there's two exits here for the conference room, one right behind you, and then the other in the door that you came in, and just follow the signs to the outside. If you haven't signed in, please do so. That helps us keep a list of participants and future information. We can get that information out to you. And if you haven't taken one of the site plans, please do so. They're on the table, and I'll go over the site plan here later on in the presentation. So with that, Pam.
And people on the phones online, if you can just remember to mute your phone so we don't get any kind of feedback or anything, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
So I'm going to share the screen.
This room isn't really for the screens and giving a presentation, and so I'm kind of we'll work through this, but it's not ideal. The people on the video are unable to see the whole presentation here, but we'll work through this. Again, this is this project, the Kasilof River Drift Boat Retrieval Project, dates back to the initial capital appropriation in 2011, and it's been an idea that's been out there for quite some time, and this is an update on the project. We're here to take questions at the end of the meeting, but the location for the drift boat retrieval has been determined. We're not here to debate whether or not this is a good location or not. That decision's been made during the public process, but we're here to provide you with an update and information and answer questions. So, Pam, as I mentioned, I'm the park superintendent for the Kenai Prince William Sound region. Joining me this evening, Pam Russell. Pam is a natural resource specialist with the Alaska State Parks. She's based here at the River Center. And then joining us from Anchorage is Reese Miranda. And Reese is the chief of the design and construction section for the state park system. So Reese will be available to answer questions about any design questions that may come up. The agenda this evening, we will talk about the project history. And that will lead into the schedule. We'll review the site plan. We'll talk about some of the concerns and response concerns that we've heard during this process and State Parks response. And then we'll wrap it up with questions. So we have until 7:30, and we will, when we get to the question period, I'd like to ask you to be mindful of others that have questions and keep your questions brief, and we'll try to get to the point. And with that, go ahead, Pam. So the project, as I mentioned, dates back to 2011 when the state legislature appropriated $2 million. That was the FY 2012 budget. The purpose of the project was to acquire property and develop a public drift boat retrieval on the lower Kasilof River. Really, one of the drivers with this was there wasn't a public takeout on the lower river, and there were some concerns with safety as well as reliability for the public to retrieve their vessels, their drift boats on the lower Kasilof. In August of 2011, DNR developed a questionnaire on the location and criteria for evaluating the property and type of facility it should be. 900 people were invited to participate. We sent out a mailing list and a mailing to 900 people, and willing sellers were also asked to submit their property for evaluation. In August of 2011, DNR scheduled a public workshop to review draft criteria that would be used for evaluating the locations. And then in January of 2012, DNR team evaluated and ranked 8 locations, and the top number 1 location was the Retrieval property, and number 2 was the Kimbrough property just upstream from that. The following year, July 2012, there was an additional 1.6 million was allocated for the project, state capital project. Again, it was for the acquisition property, development of a drift boat retrieval, as well as having a public process to determine that location. August 2014, we negotiated a sale, the Kimbrough property purchase, and then June of 2015, the Retrieval property was purchased. And so those 2 parcels are right next to each other and have been named the Old Kasilof Landing State Recreation Site in honor of the historic use of the site. The 2 parcels are located off Williamson Lane in Kasilof. And the Retrieval property, this is looking upstream and looking downstream from Retrieval operated the property. And then Kimbrough property, which is just upstream. In 2016, fall of 2016, spring of 2017, we had some cleanup work on the property, some demolition work. One of the Kimbrough house was removed and site cleanup. December of 2016, there was an open house to review 3 conceptual site plans. Many of you may have participated in that meeting in Kasilof. Public comments were accepted. And between 2017 and 21, DNR continued to evaluate project design and construction needs. We completed a cultural survey, but it became apparent that we needed additional funding to complete the project. Enough time had lapsed where just with inflation, our buying power wasn't what it was back in 2011 and 12. So we were pursuing funding, and in September of this year, the Land and Water Conservation Funds funding was awarded for $1.25 million. So January 23 today, the design is 65 to 95% in progress. And we are developing a contract for a consultant to evaluate cable retrieval systems. That will include the method that was previously used on the property, which is the cable pull system with the vehicle. We'll look at other methods too, electric winch type system. But you know, our criteria is it needs to be safe for the public to use, and it needs to be efficient for the public to also use as well. So we haven't determined what that will be, but are looking for the consultant's recommendations and suggestions. Construction is scheduled for the 23 and 24 summer seasons. And we are also pursuing funding for what we're calling the phase 2 project, which will be to construct a caretaker cabin on the property and then stabilize the existing historical building. We've had some discussions with the Kasilof Historical Society, and we'll be looking at options for potentially partnering with that organization. They've done some really good work to help preserving our history on the peninsula. And this cabin was built the original structure was built in 1926. So, you know, we're coming up on, it's almost 100 years old. So just to recap the budget, there were three basic funding sources, you know, 2 million, well, 3.6 million in state capital funding. And then the recent 1.25 million land and water conservation fund. There's approximately 2.5 million remaining for the final design, construction contract, administration, and then the project closeout. And the engineer's estimate for construction and that work falls within that 2.5 million. So the design that we're looking at, again, this is in the 65 to 95% progress. We have a, run the cursor on that, just to kind of point.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I haven't done it.
Okay, this is Tallgrass and Williamson Lane. Oops. This is the Kasilof River here. Those arrows that are pointing upstream, you know, we should, that's just think of it as salmon swimming upstream. That's the direction that the salmon are swimming. So that's not the flow of the river. The park entrance. So this is the Retrieval property, and then this was the Kimbrough property that have been combined. And the design calls for one entrance to the facility with a way to leave. If you're in the wrong spot, you can return. 47 unit parking area for vehicles and trailers. And then just with the elevation and topography, there will be a kind of a switchback that goes down the hill, our landing area. And this is the area that was previously used for the retrieval site. There will not be any parking down there. This will just be for the retrieval. There's 12 parking spaces for single vehicles. A day use and interpretive area to help explain the history of the significance of the property. And then there's paths, pedestrian walkways throughout the project area to get people through and from the upper parking lot to the lower parking lot. This is kind of a shortcut with some stairs to help with get up to the parking area. And then a restroom down at the landing area. Concerns that have been raised, and the response, division's response. One thing that we've heard, one of the first concerns that came up was that power boats could launch at the facility. And back in 16, when we had our public meeting, one of the designs featured a traditional boat ramp. We heard the concerns, and the design has been changed to a cable pull system. How exactly that looks remains to be determined, but it will be a cable type pull system. And then we recently created a regulation that basically prohibits powerboat use at the site, with the exception of a 10-horse kicker. So that regulation is right below. Yeah, the person may not launch a boat into the Kasilof River at Old Kasilof Landing in the Kasilof River State Recreation Site, unless permitted by the director under 11 AC 18. That would require a permit and would require a determination that it was justified. It would be unlikely that we would permit anyone, but it would be an option if there was if there was a need. Perhaps scientific research or other type work, but for someone, it would be prohibited for the average person to be launching a boat at the site. A person may only retrieve a boat from the Kasilof River if the boat is non-motorized or has a 10-horse, essentially a 10-horse kicker. We've also heard concerns about the impacts to the neighborhood. Hours of operation will be established. When Mr. Trujillo operated this site, he had hours in place, and we'll be looking at those hours, considering those, as well as working with the users and the neighbors to come up with hours that are suitable. Landscape berm and vegetation along neighboring property lines, and then fencing where landscaping berm and vegetation is not feasible. Security and vandalism. Our response was caretaker will be on site when the facility is open. And then we will pursue funding to construct a cabin for a year-round caretaker. But this is similar to how we operate other boat launch sites, and likely we'll start off with like a kind of like a camp host. We'll recruit someone with an RV to live on the site until we can get a caretaker cabin in place. Then let's see, number 2, access road and gates will be closed during the off season. Other concerns that we've heard are the subdivision roads. The roads were designed for light duty residential traffic. They're borough roads, they're not state roads. And the funding that we have does not cover the costs of paving. So we certainly support paving, and we'll be working through with the neighbors and the borough to try to figure out how we can do that. And there also needs to be additional road signage within the subdivision, and towing if necessary if people are enforcement of that. What we've seen at other areas, like Crooked Creek, back when that was busy, we saw the installation of signs on the borough roads seem to do the trick, along with the enforcement. So we also heard concerns that there could be sport fishing and personal use fishing at the retrieval site. We can address this with, by creating a parks, a state park director's order that prohibits access for habitat protection prior to opening the facility. This is a pretty easy process for us to draft this. We could probably put this together within a half hour and have the director sign this, but this will act as a temporary regulation until a state park regulation can be created. And that's exactly why we have that ability to create these director's orders for the short term. These fixing things in the short term until we can pursue a regulation packet. But this is how we manage our other sites on the Kenai River. All of the state park boat launches have these director's orders that in place. Because we don't want people trying to fish within the retrieval site. And with that, we can move into the question period. That's the our presentation here this evening that let you know where we're at. I thought we'll start off with the people in the room just to raise the hands, and you're welcome to ask your question. And are there any questions in the back?
Yes. So the state land owns some land also in Williamson at the end of the road.
Mm-hmm.
There are several parcels along Coal Creek, where it's the confluence of Coal Creek and the Kasilof River. Do any of these regulations apply to that, or what are the plans? I'm just wondering if there is if there are any. Right now, there's not much. They're state land, as far as I know, not any particular rules pertaining to them. Are there any expected changes there?
No, those properties were purchased for habitat acquisition for purposes, and we don't have any development at this time. Let's see, Jane.
As many of you know, we, the neighbors of Coal Creek subdivision, have been fighting the state since 2016. When we found out that they had bought the land, we're planning on putting in a boat pullout on the Trujillo Kimball property. A parcel of 11.71 acres with floodplain approximately 3 to 5 of those acres. This property is in the middle of a very quiet and peaceful subdivision of 23 full-time residents, which will affect every one of those properties due to the location and the 3 different roads that will be used to get to the old Kasilof landing. When we met at the Tustamina Elementary in December 14th, 2016, we were then told it was not going to be a drift boat only pull-up, but a full-fledged boat launch facility, like what you had mentioned. That created much of the community to be up in arms due to the increased boat traffic on the river. Because right now, any size boat and motor can go on that river as long as that boat isn't fishing. However, as defined, dip netting is not considered fishing, therefore making it legal to use Old Kasilof Landing as not only a takeout, but also a launch. When the community found that out, there was much letter writing, petitions, and scores of people in opposition of it being a launch. At that time, Parks Director Ben Ellis said he needed the launch for extra funding, that the boat launch would produce an ongoing cost of operating Old Kasilof Landing. Shortly after that, the new director, Mr. Ricky Geese, took over, who's not here tonight, surprisingly. Fast forward to May 5th, 2022, when we received an email from you, Jack, and the email stated exactly what it was, but I'm going to reread that again. AR, Administrative Regulation 11AAC 20.1914, Old Kasilof Landing boat launching and retrieval. Person may not launch a boat into the Kasilof River at Old Kasilof Landing in the Kasilof State Recreational Site unless permitted by the director. Under 11 AAC 18, a person may only retrieve a boat from the Kasilof River at the Old Kasilof Landing if the boat is 1, non-motorized, 2, equipped with not more than 1 motor with a total propeller shaft horsepower rating of 10 horsepower or less. So, my question is, an administrative regulation, is that a law?
Yes, it's essentially a regulation. Well, it's a regulation, gives us the authority to issue a citation.
So a regulation can be changed, yes or no?
A regulation can be changed. Now, this is a director's order, that can be changed. All regulations can be changed, yes.
Okay, so the other question is the part that says unless permitted by the director. So say that Director Geese gets pressure from Anchorage and the Valley. They want more access for the dip netters. So essentially, Director Geese, or years down the road after the facility is built, that can be changed.
The regulations can be changed. This regulation does allow for the director to consider a permit, but there would have to be a determination, a careful determination that was drafted and evaluated to determine if it was in the best interest to do that. And there's a number of criteria that we're looking at. So it would, yeah.
So basically, the best interest of thousands of people in Anchorage and the Valley want better access to dip netting.
Well, I think the key thing, Jane, is, going back to the original capital appropriation, it was for a drift boat takeout. And that's, we're designing it to that. That's one of the reasons we're looking at this design similar to how it was previously.
Well, my final statement is to please reallocate these monies to move the facility to the mouth of the Kasilof, where the state has a lot of land, develop a state-of-the-art facility for all user groups, and not just one user group that will dominate this facility. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, not a question, but a comment. I'm from Iowa, and I can't believe that the state of Alaska would do this to people living in a quiet neighborhood. Some of our people have lived there for 40 years. I've only been there for 6 years myself. But in Iowa, people, the state, when they buy places like this, they're in rural areas. They aren't through somebody's private neighborhood.
Sure. Historically, this site was used for a drift boat retrieval. Kasilof did set the number of people that were limiting or limit the use of the site. But, it was a previous use of, this use previously occurred at this site too.
Right.
And
Well, I understand that, but I don't believe it's gonna be anything near like this. When I look at this map, all the parking places just scare me. I mean, there's gonna be a ton of usage on that road and through our neighborhood.
okay.
And I know there was no debate on the site, but there is a better site, I believe.
Well, we had a public process to come up with the top 8 locations, and I understand you don't believe this is the best location, but it did, after going through the process, it was the top location. Ben?
Hi, Jack. Thanks. I'm short, so I'm gonna stand up. I am standing up, look at that. So, Jack, you had mentioned about, and again, we're talking about process. So I'm gonna jump on that a little bit as far as we're just told in your presentation that 900 people were invited to participate. Of all the people that I talked to in the subdivision, only one person raised their hand that they actually received an invitation to participate. Because a lot of these decisions were based on this survey and stuff, these 900 people. And so I would probably like to ask Jack if you could give me a list of those invited to participate. Because I'm really surprised. Everything's been based on this is a site selection, this is that. And a lot of our subdivision never even had seen that. So if you could, I just appreciate that. And then, Jack, you referred to getting public comment on the 2016 meeting. Was that the meeting at Tuscaloosa Elementary?
It was.
At that time, remember the way that the process went was to separate everybody into tables and stuff. There was not a time to collaborate or have any kind of public testimony. So I would debate that idea of getting public feedback at that meeting. That was on purpose not to have that type of discussion or dialogue. So that's not a true statement.
Well, it allowed us to capture concerns at that meeting, which we did.
Somewhat. It wasn't an open dialogue type of meeting where any kind of thing like this where we had discussion. And I appreciate this time too, Jack. So I know it's, there's better things to do tonight for you and everything else, but I do appreciate it. The other thing is the money that on the water soil conservation grant. And number one, has that actually been awarded yet or in your coffers, in the department's coffers? And or does that have to be managed?
It has not, it's not in our numbers yet. But and there is a match with that. There's a state match.
And so all the money that's awarded so far, the only expenditure really has been to purchase land and some preliminary studies.
The cultural survey, the environmental cleanup, and the initial design.
And so no contracts have been given out yet for construction.
Correct.
And you had mentioned too, again, it's kind of a question on, you had put on there as far as on the off season that the gates would be closed. And what do you anticipate the off season being?
When the fisheries, when there's no more public use and use is pretty much wrapped up for the year, we'll have to, determine that. But the boat ramp at the up at the bridge, we generally will close that at November type, December.
Okay.
So when.
And this is kind of piggybacking, and a lot of friends that I have guide that river and stuff too. And I don't think that people have underestimated the power of the Anchorage-Wasilla caucus when it comes to getting access. Once that facility is made, then the expenditure, the scope of the expenditure was for drift boat takeout only. But once that's built, then it can be changed as far as the use of the facility. And when they don't have a public boat launch to launch boats to go dip netting, there's a huge contingency up there, and the Anchorage-Wasilla caucus could change that to the part where the people that are trying to push for it to get this done, because that's where they pulled out guiding for years, they might not be able to utilize that facility in the near future.
So,
Because the administrative reg could definitely be changed through the pressure of their legislators, the legislators and senators.
to change a regulation would require a public process, and it takes, a year and a half, 2 years, to go through that, but that's handled by the lieutenant governor's office and.
But I'm just saying, it's a lot shakier than some people may think, because I've seen ARs be changed at the drop of a hat, let alone just a change of administration. But once a caucus of lawmakers get together and they have their folks jump on board, that's a big group that's big numbers there. So anyway, but just so I can understand that too, the AR can be changed relatively easy if they have the desire to do so.
I wouldn't say it's an easy process. I think it's a lengthy process but it's a public process.
Right, but every year you see the list of ARs that are amended, changed, whatever. There's a huge list every year. Thank you, Jack.
Thanks, Ben. Questions? Brett?
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. It's pretty straightforward and informative. I was curious about, it looked to me like 3.6 million was just allocated or appropriated by the legislature. And then there was monies that came later, maybe it was, I forgot the number exactly, but that was allocated or appropriated in a different fashion, something about conservation. Could you tell me where that money came from? I was a little.
Sure. There's a federal program called the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And that is a federal program that's available for conservation, recreation type purposes. We use that throughout the state, at various sites for facilities but that's where that came from. It's a 1-to-1 match, and the state gets a certain amount every year. Some of it goes to state parks, other can go to municipalities, other entities. But there is a match with that, and that match has been covered.
So I understand that some of the properties adjacent were bought for conservation to protect the river bank and that sort of thing. And so how does conservation apply to this boat takeout?
So the LWC, we call it LWCF, Land and Water Conservation Fund. That can be used for facility improvements, designs. A lot of the original state parks in Alaska were funded through LWCF money. So it can be used for recreation development, but there are restrictions with the LWCF that require the property to be used for the initial intent that it was purchased or developed for. The LWCF fund would also, just leave it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And may I ask one more, as long as I'm talking already? So the boat launch, which is up there by the bridge, that's been there since I was a kid. The people can launch there, they can launch with a motor any size, right? Any size, yeah, okay. And so then if they go down to the Trujillo, or you're calling it Old Kasilof, or whatever you're calling it, boat takeout there, you'll have to have a sign up or something to let them know that if they have a motor above 10, they can't get taken out there, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We'll have to make sure that there's, that it's signed and there's notice posted.
Where do people with bigger motors, do they just drive back to where they put in at and get taken out there?
Yeah, you guys probably see the type of use on the river. You don't see a lot of power boats launched there, but every once in a while.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of huge amount of people.
And there's some pretty
What are you
big.
gonna say? There's somebody
Yeah.
there that can say, no, I don't know that you're having a vote.
Hang on a second, let's finish up with.
Well, I don't really know because I'm not on the river during the summer, but I do know this because I sit on the Cooking and Aquaculture Board that the Aquaculture Association has some mold traps that we monitor so we can count the smoke going out. We had one, we actually have two. The way they work is we catch fish, little smolt in the lower trap, and then we bring them up to the upper trap, or we bring them upstream and put them back in the water. At one point, we had two traps, which was working really great because we could catch them in the upper trap, then we put them in some dye, we put them back in the water, and then however many we catch in the lower trap, we were able to figure out how many smolt total by a little process there. Anyway, somebody launched a powerboat at the upper trap and managed to run into our cable or something and it caused so that now we no longer can do the depths there and story and that.
But your point is, no, it's not prohibited for somebody to launch power.
Yep, and so there'll need to be some way to alert people at the lower or at this takeout that they can't use it if they have a motor bigger than 10 horse.
Right. And I think you had a question.
How are you gonna control that? If I bring my 50 horsepower and I need to get out, who's gonna say I can't do it?
So we'll have a caretaker on the property.
And what kind of power does he have?
And just like you or me. But what they can do, they can talk to them and then they can call the ranger to respond.
And how soon would the ranger respond?
It depends on where the ranger's at. But that model works pretty effective at our other units on the Kenai. We don't have rangers in each part. They cover an area, and when there's an issue and they need to respond to it, they'll.
I got one other question.
Go ahead.
You said you put signs up for parking, no parking on the road.
We don't have funding for pavement or construction, but that's a need that will.
So, but what are you gonna do if somebody parks? There's no parking sign in the park. We were told before that they would definitely tow the cars or the trucks, but they will not tow a truck that's pulling a trailer. So now what do we do with those? That's fine. I can park here because I have a trailer. What are you gonna do?
Well, that's something we'll have to work through and.
But they already told us that they told us a lot of things. They told us they're gonna pave the roads and they were gonna put these signs and they would tow the people. But they will not. There's nobody that'll tow a truck with a trailer.
Well, we'll look into that and deal with that when it happens. You know, keep in mind, we're looking at construction 23, 24. It's likely that the facility will open in the 25, for the 25 season. That's, you know, our best estimate at this time. So that's not like we're opening this up tomorrow. We have, you know, ample time to continue the discussions with the borough and work through this.
Okay, well, there's only 47 parking spaces with trailers and truck, and 12 with just a vehicle.
Right.
So what happens when there's 60 and 80 people show up
They'll have to find another place to park.
on our road?
Well, that's why you have signs and
And what are
enforcement.
you gonna do about them? That's the whole point. They made it perfectly clear. Oh, we're gonna do this. They told us that several times. And then they turn right around and say, oh, no, we can't do that. And I said, well, why did you tell us you would? Otherwise, there's no control over this. Or somebody pulling in a bigger motor on the takeout person that's there in charge, he has no power. He can't do it. He's gonna call a policeman or a ranger.
Correct.
And when we call the police out there, or we're far enough out, they'll come the next day usually.
Well,
That's not gonna help, is it?
well, you're talking about the troopers and, you know, we have our own enforcement people, our own rangers that can do that. So, next question. In the back.
I just got kind of caught into this. I didn't even know it was going on. My residence is 0.5 of a mile from Old Kasilof. From what I've seen at Eagle Rock, Pillars, and Kenine, I can only imagine what our area is going to look like, because it's not only going to impact the residents in that subdivision, it's going to impact people like me who take care of the right of way. And you're talking about parking at the Kenine Airport. That's going to become tent city. RVs, people are going to be bringing in ATVs to get from point A to point B. So I'm baffled, and this is my question. Why is the state going to destroy one quiet, innocent neighborhood with this project when there is a better, more intelligent, cost-saving to the state alternative, which is the Kasilof Beach?
Exactly.
Why is all this money being spent in this residence when K Beach is 5 minutes down the road from where this thing's gonna be put in? And it's already been improved down there. So it's not gonna cost parks that much more.
So,
So it's just not making sense to me. I'm sorry.
well, let me respond. The initial survey and questions, you know, that were put out there, some of the feedback that we got back then was, don't put a boat launch on the lower Kasilof River. And so that was one of the concerns, an actual boat launch. There was concerns about increase to the boating traffic on the PU fishery. During that public process, the Trujillo and the Kimbrough property were the top two properties that were evaluated and ranked. And so that's why those sites were so acquired.
And it took no consideration of the people that lived there. None.
That's
outrageous.
That's why we're here this evening to talk through, provide you with an update. And, you know, we
After $7.35 million goes down the toilet for a boat launch, it's a cable pullout. You got 47 parking places and 100 fishermen.
So
Look what happens down at the inlet.
yeah,
You guys did nothing.
that's not a state park area that we manage. And please keep your
I'm
limit your
telling you.
comments to a question, please.
Question, how are you gonna enforce it with rangers that aren't there?
Well-
You're gonna put signs up that say no parking?
No.
Are you going to do it, yes or no?
We will have parking signs in the facility.
How about no parking on the streets in our development?
Well, as I already addressed that, and there's a need for signs. We don't have the funding to pave or do the signs outside of the park. That's on a borough subdivision roads. We, recognize the need and, to upgrade that road and pave it, cut down on maintenance costs. We support that and are here working, are here to work with you on that, but there would need to be a fund. Got it, Tom?
I have a couple questions. First off, Trujillo's basically got out of the drift pullout business in '07. In '08, there was another agency or another person, another company that took over that and has been operating that way for a lot of years. Didn't seem to be any problems. And the difference between pulling a boat out at Trujillo's and pulling a boat out at another location on that river is about a half an hour boat ride. Now, it's a cable pullout also. We've discussed this. Trujillo's is going to be another cable pullout also. What happens if that company right now says, you're putting the screws to me and I'm just going to close my door and you're not going to open this facilities up for another 3 years? What are you going to do?
We'll open it up when
I didn't say what are the fishermen going to do?
Yeah, the state will open it up when the facility's been constructed. But you bring up a good point, Tom, and that's, one of the drivers with this project was, public retrieval, that's safe to operate and reliable, and that's public can count on.
Totally agree. But here's the other problem, and this is the other portion of this question, is that what you're talking about is taking a subdivision that's been there. I've been there for 42 years. Some people have been there actually longer than that, and we have people coming and going all the time. But you're going to spend nigh on of $5 million to put a boat retrieval in where it's not wanted, which we've already had that discussion, for maybe 100 people that fish that river in the summertime, where 70% of those people are not even Alaskans. And that irks me to no end, especially the way money, it could be better allocated and better well spent.
In the back.
I get that, you have a neighborhood and you don't want people coming through it. I understand that. My question is, as I guide on the river there, I would say that there's definitely more residents, I would say, in my opinion, than there is non-residents fishing on there. I launched there when I first came up here 23 years ago, and we went through the neighborhood, trails around the deal, and we were on a tight leash with him. He was the one that made the rules, coming in and going out, and if he didn't like your behavior, you just didn't pull out there. I see it as a safety issue, far as only one place to pull out. Everybody says the beach, that's hours away on the river, especially with the 10 motor. So I see it as a safety issue. I don't, I'll be mindful when I'm driving through the neighborhood if people live there. That's all I can do, but I won't park in front of somebody's house. I don't like when somebody does that to me in my place. So my deal is if it's a drift boat only pull out, I'm all for that. My question is, what about the dip netters that are coming back that have full boats, stopping off, dropping fish off, picking more people up, running back down? I could see where, I would think that would be a bigger issue than somebody trying to pull a power boat out of a cable launch place. I just don't. I don't see that happening. Somebody would be stuck in the side of the bank there. But I do see people walking up and down, carting fish back and forth. White people are trying to pull boats out and stuff like that. I could see where that would be a safety deal. And I could see where that would add a whole bunch of extra traffic to the area.
Yeah, well, that's something we'll keep an eye on, and that's something that we can work with Fish and Game on and monitor and steps to try to correct that or adjust that if we need to, so we'll keep an eye on it.
So I see that on your facility here, you don't specify whether, is this gonna be paved parking?
Yes,
Okay,
it'll be paid, the entire
so
traffic circulation,
the
road.
traffic circulation, if you're driving and you got a drip boat trailer, the way you've got it, you're pulling forward into the space. Right, so I think that it's gonna end up like a real big mess because of the direction that you have people going and the angle of the parking. Because if they pull in with their drift boat trailer, then when they go to back out to go pick up their boat, okay, you won't be able to see what's going on and back out while someone else is coming in. A lot of times, if you've got a pickup with a drift boat trailer, empty drift boat trailer, you can't even see the drift boat trailer back there. You know, maybe you got a shell on it, maybe you got a Suburban. I mean, there's no pull through here.
Correct, that's how most of our facilities are designed.
Yeah, so, I mean, I just see that as kind of a design flaw that's.
So you'd rather see back in, like? Yeah. All right. Well, the issue with pull through is we're trying to maximize our parking.
I
Understand
that, yeah, but, you know, I've seen it up at Jim's Landing, you know, the pull-throughs get filled up with the boat trailers and everything really quick. And then you get people who decide, well, it's just a mess. I'm gonna take 2 or 3 of these spaces. And then you've got 47 spaces that turn into 20 spaces because.
Well, you know, I haven't seen that at places like Eagle Rock. It's, you know, those sites are pretty well maxed out.
Yeah, I haven't seen.
Thank you. Appreciate it. In the back.
Yeah, hi, I'm new to the community. I've been down for Kasilof for 6 years. I guide on this river. I understand coming into a neighborhood and why you guys are here. I want to know if anybody here can bet up where the bridge access is, because those vehicles have been parking down that gravel road for the last couple of years on overflow, because we've had so many guides and boats on this river. That's number one. Number two, I do not see a fish cleaning station, which means that guides and user groups are gonna have to find a different means to get rid of their fish. And that carcasses could also deter some of this that you guys are worried about. State troopers are on that river daily, regulating. Trooper Loring's on there. And also, the guys at the Kasilof River self-regulate this river and the public. Everyone knows each other. And there's a lot of self-regulating going on in the river. Right now, the traffic's going down North Coho Loop. I believe the speed limit on North Coho is 55 miles an hour, 45 miles an hour. We've had a couple of death accidents on some blind corner. There's state hasn't put up any signs for these corners, any of this kind of stuff. So you're talking about a lot of guide traffic at 2:30, 1:30, 4 a.m. That's going to be doing 45, 55 miles an hour down North Coho Loop. Let those guys use shuttle programs. These shuttle programs is one car that has several drivers. They're going to be coming through your neighborhood, supposedly, if this passes, it's going to. At a suggested speed limit. So if there's an issue, this goes to that company and says, hey, we've got 5 or 6 shuttle drivers that are making trips all day long with these boats. We're running 2, sometimes 3 times trips a day. Okay. I have no problem driving 15 miles an hour in your neighborhood. I have no problem if the state wants to allocate money to a water truck to bring the dust out. Okay, we are all paying for these user groups. If a trooper says you are not gonna drop fish off from a dip netter, you are not gonna clean fish and dispose carcasses here, that's ticketable, correct? This is all going on now as we speak, every season. It's already happening. If you want to launch a dip net boat, you go to the bridge and you go. You cannot fish until after September 1st from a powerboat. Okay, so these user groups are not going to change. We've had several powerboats launch at this bridge and it is dangerous. Everyone knows how dangerous that river is. Somebody will get hurt, killed, client, non-resident, someone that is a resident's insurance for a guiding company or a personal use company. If you live on the river and you're out there enjoying your property and you're anchored up and a powerboat goes by, loses power, we've seen lock power, drifting down river, and we've got clients on anchor and a powerboat's gonna come across our anchor line. So these are situations that are already there. And like I said, I don't mean to offend anybody. I'm part of the neighborhood as well. I live on mile 2 of K Beach. But this traffic's already there. This traffic's going 45 miles an hour on North Coho to all of those neighborhoods that are going by right now. The state has put in a public launch for drift and power, and we have to pay a private takeout. And it's the same regulation as what they had before. If he chooses to not like you or something dangerous happens, you're done with that facility. So, there's rules and regulations and what we're talking about here, but we are a very self-regulated community down there. So I do understand the concern. And, I live there, I'm part of it. I've lived at property in this neighborhood and I moved across the street. So I'm just asking, without fish cleaning facilities, what are you gonna do to keep more power boats from launching at the bridge? Is there gonna be signage saying, hey, you can launch here, but you are not gonna be able to take out at this strip and only takeout. You are not gonna be able to drop fish off there. You have 12 parking spaces for non-trailered vehicles. Okay, and as a community, the no parking signs, and that has to be respected. I mean, I 100% understand, like troopers should be there, police and all that, but these vehicles all have a license plate that is parked in front of your house. I'm having a hard time understanding, if I can't go into where we're paying to take my drift boat out and I can't park there, I need to find another place. So I'm having a hard time understanding, through in a parking space, Eagle Rock, all the ones on the Kenai River are all back in or pulled forward in. There is no pull through. So all of this stuff is in place. I don't understand why the beach facility is not something that was taken into account.
Well, it was, and it was not, did not rank highly on the list, so.
Like I said, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but what we're talking about is what's going on right now already. And it's pretty casual down there. I mean, it's pretty casual, so.
Well, thanks for your observations, and let's go ahead, Pam, and open it up. Let's see, if you're on Teams and would like to ask a question, can you raise your hand?
Bill, you have a question?
Oh, yeah, this is actually Laurie Hudson. We actually have property at the end of Williamson. Just for the record, I know you said you've been sending things out. We've owned the property since 2016. I talked to you the other day, Jack. We didn't get any information about any of this going on until we got the notification for this meeting. So I'm not sure how you're saying you're disseminating information to the neighborhood, but we certainly haven't gotten any information. But
So there's a question here. This is Bill. First of all, what about environmental assessment? I'd like to go back to that for a minute. You've talked about that a couple of times, but what I've not heard you talk about in the environmental assessment, did it address the land animals? Did it address, the moose population or any of the other populations? One of the reasons why we're in this property is because we like being around the animals. And with all this with all this traffic associated with whatever, whether you're talking about trailers or people coming in and out, I believe it's going to have an impact on the land animals. Also, the other question associated with that is, what are you going to do about the duck hunters? One of the other things is I see a lot of traffic associated with the duck hunters. So I'm not sure how that fits into the boat traffic associated with the dip netters, but I do see that there's two different types of motor type operation, dip netters and hunters, and that's going to start to impact the ducks in the area as well as some of the other animals. So I'm just kind of curious how that's going to all happen.
Sure, Bill. To address the environmental assessment, this is a state of Alaska project, and the state was not required to do an EA with this project. The capital appropriation did identify the need for a public process, and the criteria that was used to evaluate the sites was developed through that public process. As for the duck hunters, that the regulation, I pointed out that regulation that prohibits the launching of power boats and only being able to retrieve a boat with up to 10 horsepower motors. So that regulation is in effect right now and is in effect year round.
Okay, so I'm curious if I can ask just one more question, and I think my wife has one more. So the question about timing, the sun stays up 24 hours a day, so I assume that this thing during prime season is going to be open 24 hours a day. That really doesn't have much of time. We were not around when the Trujillos and those were using it, so I don't know how they did it. But are we, as the population, are we going to have the ability to have input into that timing? Or is that something that's going to be decided based on, sun, weather, fish? I didn't quite understand your comment that you made to that earlier. And my wife's last question is, you mentioned there was criteria around selecting this property. So we've never seen the criteria. Is that criteria anywhere available to the public so we can figure out how you got to this being the number one choice?
Some of the information on on our website, you can refer to is included, but and that website, Bill, is, I'll pull that up here at the very end if you don't have that, but you can check and you can see the questionnaire and responses that was submitted. But
yeah, we did look at that online, but what we didn't see, we see the questions, but that does not give you the decision criteria. What that does is that gives you where the information came from. I'm more looking at what was the decision criteria that actually ranked the facilities.
I'm not prepared to respond to that right now, Bill, but I'd be happy to follow up with you on that.
Excellent.
And
Excellent.
Was there another question did we cover all your questions?
The timing, are we gonna have an input in the timing?
Yeah, the time.
Yeah, so that's absolutely, ultimately state parks will make that decision, hours of operation. But that's something we want to work with the neighbors. We want to work with the users. We also want to work with the Maltese that operate the take out down at the cabins and, you know, to work with all users to come up with that. But, you know, hours of operation, you know, if you live next to a gun range, rifle range, I think it's reasonable to expect hours of operation. And we'll certainly take a look at what the hours that Mr. Trujillo had in place too, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Donna, go ahead, please. And you're muted.
Hi, Donna Bartman. I live in the Coal Creek subdivision adjacent to Fox Hills, so it's upstream from the intersection of the Coal Creek and the Kasilof River. Kasilof River, my husband and I have lived here for over 40 years. We understand the whole situation. For many years, we would launch our little drift boat down the Kasilof and take out our Trujillos, and it was great. That closed. And then going downstream is just a lot further, and it's very unpleasant takeout with that cable system for our situation, okay? Now, on paper, I mean, I gotta hand it to you. It all kind of looks like a neat little package, right? It seems kind of sane. But what people have been pointing out is sort of true. I mean, when we go put in up at the bridge, there's plenty of use up there, and then the guides have the client cars. So if there's 47 spaces down at the old Kasilof landing, there's going to be a lot of client cars, so there's not going to be able to be that many boat trailer parking spots, frankly. And so that could be a problem, okay? So then what happens is people start getting stacked up with their boats trying to take out, right? So then you'd call your friend, or if you have this shuttle service, which, by the way, my experience is, yes, they do a good job, but they drive crazy fast. And so then you're down there waiting with your boat to go get your truck retrieved from the up at the bridge. So there's going to be like people starting to stack up waiting to get their boats out, okay? So that's going to be a problem. And then the other thing with this deal, and I know about the dip netting thing too, that, I mean, people will be wanting to motor up there to, you know, drop their fish off, okay? And that's going to be a super bad problem. Because I can see it when somebody mentioned, oh my gosh, they're going to be taking the four-wheelers, they're going to be camping out at the airport and all this. It could be like that. So that's a big time concern. So we can't have those folks dropping the fish off there with their motorboats. And speaking of the motorboats have really increased going down for the dip netting. We can hear them all the time. I mean, okay, we hear some boats, okay, but there is more use of people taking risks getting their boats down. We've seen boats dump up there by Crooked Creek, the motorboats, and it is a dangerous situation. So, you know, we don't need a whole bunch of motorboats down there, okay? So I appreciate your efforts with that. And it sounds like you know, oh yeah, and with pillars, yeah, they have the overflow de facto parking across the street, right? Old Kasilof isn't going to be having that, so it's going to be, you know, parking management thing that everyone's going to need your help on, okay? So I feel bad that it's not going to be able to be paved, and it doesn't sound like you're going to change the site, but darn, I mean, down at the mouth would have been good, you know? Don't know if you're still, you know, it doesn't sound like you're going to be changing your mind on that. But any way you can help out the neighborhoods over here, I mean, we just have to have it, you know what I mean? And it was really, people are skeptical, believing, I mean, it seems good right now, but the fact that these things can be changed, we've been going to meetings for, my God, many, many years, okay? And, you know, okay, we get this little thing happening now, and then all of a sudden there's going to be another kind of a thing that has to happen where we're going to get a lot of pressure from the people in the valley. It's true. And we're the small little Kasilof census area down here. And I don't want to see us get screwed by the public pressure from, hey, they already got the beach, leave us alone. So, just stay the course and help out the neighborhoods as best as you can down here and, don't bow to public pressure. Thanks.
Thanks, Donna. Pam, do we have any other hands up?
I didn't see any other hands up. I'm gonna call the numbers on the phone, the last 4 digits. If you have a question, let me know. 1856. Go on to the next one, 6802. Do you have any questions? Okay, next one is 2900. And then the last one is 2878.
So these are the people that called in and, they don't have a way to raise their hands, so we have to.
2878, do you have any questions? Go ahead. Yep.
I do. Thank you. My name's Doug Gardner. I'm staff to Senator Stevens, and Jack, I want to thank you for being available to our constituents tonight to answer questions. I understand it's a tough spot to be in. I have a couple questions. The first question I have, I'll give you the 2 questions and you can handle them how you'd like. But they're mostly budget questions. And the first question is, with respect to the LWCF, you mentioned a match. Do you need the legislature to do something? In other words, does the legislature need to appropriate the money for the match in order to make this project go forward? That's the first question. And the second question is, has there been an what would the senators and representatives need to know about what the operating budget is each year to operate the OKL? In other words, has there been an evaluation of how much it costs to do maintenance, fix the buildings, pay for maintenance on the cable? I'm just trying to understand the budget aspects of this so that I can report back to the senator. This is in our Senate district, and we recognize we have constituents on both sides of this issue, drifters and residents, but we just need to understand what the dollar amount is here for those 2 questions. Thank you.
Sure. So the question is the Land and Water Conservation Funding match, and that is the state already has that in place through this LWCF approach. We do have the match, so no work is necessary on that, Doug. And then as for the operating costs, as we get closer to opening the facility, we will likely be requesting a assistance and support for the operating costs. I put together, looked at this question actually came up, Doug, earlier last week, and similar cost to operate like the Eagle Rock facility. That's around $5,000. Now that doesn't include the existing staff that will we're not charging for my time to go to meetings to talk about the boat launch, but just the actual operating cost around $5,000. That will likely be a little higher at this site because we have the historical cabin that we may end up heating or utility costs, and if we end up with a cable system, that will likely be an annual replacement cost too. So as we get closer to opening the facility, we'll be keeping in mind the increase to operate what it will cost us to operate, and we'll request those through our through the administration. So
one last question.
Doug,
thank you. Follow up.
Go ahead, Doug.
So just as a quick follow up, and again, thanks, Jack, for being available tonight. So have you or the folks in your department interviewed the existing operator to find out how much the costs are down at, I don't know what the other facility is called, but the existing private facility, have you had any conversation with them about how much it costs them to do business? Just last question. Thank you.
Sure, we have had some discussions with the operators at the cabins, and we haven't talked dollar amounts, but we have they have shared with us their staffing and how they operate the site. So this number that I put out, the 5,000 at Eagle Rock, will likely increase at this site, and it could increase if we need an additional operator, or depending on our staffing needs as well. But we need to get through this, get through the design in order to once the design's finalized and we have a system in place, then we'll be able to identify our operating costs a little better.
Thank you.
Bill raised.
Yeah, Bill, we've got time for another quick question if you'd like, but there's other hands up in the room here too. Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks, Jack. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you being here. Just like Doug said, it's a pleasure, and it's kind of hard to do this over the phone or by Teams. But the last question, I'm a little confused. I've heard two different operational dates. I've heard 2024, summer 2024, and summer 2025. What is your operational date expectation?
So it's possible we could open the site in 24. If everything went smoothly with contracts, we could potentially have it open towards the end of the 24 season. But I think it's, to be on the safe side, I think it's more accurate to plan on the 25 season, that it will be open.
Are you getting any pressure from anybody anywhere within your organization or within the state government organization to open earlier?
Pressure, no. There's certainly a lot of interest in the facility. The initial capital appropriation was back in 2011, and so there's definitely interest in the project and a desire to have it open sooner than later.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yes, please.
I'd like to paint a picture and then ask a question. My husband and I have a combined over 70 years living in Alaska, so we are committed to Alaska. We moved into Coal Creek Estate 17 years ago, and we truly, truly enjoy living there. The neighborhood's wonderful, the neighbors are wonderful. It has been a quiet and safe neighborhood since we have moved in. We see our neighbors and their children walking with and without dogs, riding bicycles, cross-country skiing, and riding horses on the neighborhood roads. We use our neighborhood. We have serious safety concerns regarding the ability to utilize our neighborhood roads with a boat retrieval site. Cars, garbage, and other issues would impede our access to our neighborhood. So my question is, and it's very big, can our safety and our right to access be assured?
Well, I think we recognize that it's important to have a pedestrian walkway within the neighborhood, and so that's one of the ways that I think will help to keep people safe, is to develop a walkway, pave the roads.
More people than a walkway use our neighborhood, and it's used at all times of the day by our neighbors. So I'm just going to respectfully ask that placement of the boat retrieval site be considered at the mouth of the river.
our neighborhood or our neighborhood would continue as a place of refuge, which it is right now, and I think many of my neighbors feel that way. And access to the river would be in place. The situation would be a win for our neighbors and a win for people wanting access to the Kasilof River. Thank you.
For the record, does the state of Alaska currently or in the past operate any boat haul outs with cable use statewide?
Not that I'm aware of. We have, just down the highway at Deep Creek and Anchor River, those are tractors, but cable retrieval systems.
So the other question I have is legal on the state side okay with the fact that this high-risk use device be used? Because at one of the other meetings we went to, there was somebody from legal there that said that underwriting that sort of thing just about be impossible, especially right after somebody got killed by it.
Yeah, so one of the things that your question about the cable systems, in the Western US, they are used in other states and federal agencies. State of Oregon comes to mind. We've actually contacted the state of Oregon and they've shared some information that they have, but certainly safety is paramount, and that's.
And those are public used cable systems operated on federal land?
Yes, BLM, Bureau of Land Management. We'll get back to you here in just a second. Yes, sir.
Jack, you make me really happy that I'm retired. I admire you being up there and facing all this frustration in the room. And I think the thing that most of us are coming to terms with is we're frustrated with how progress is changing our little river. We haven't been here but since 2009, and I'm one of the people who called you up being frustrated about the timeline, because when the state bought True Hills, it wasn't broken and you had a $2 million budget. I can understand that you wanted to put in a nice facility, but it seems like it's taken much too long and it's costing a lot more money than it needed to cost. So I was one of those people who called you up directly and said, hey, what's going on? When I moved here, we had Coho Cove, we had the cabins, and we had True Hills. And I can sense the frustration of the people who don't want their neighborhood torn up, but our frustration is more with the powerboat situation. And I was wondering, is there anything DNR can do to address the situation with especially the large horsepower, but also the smaller ones on the upper river? Is that within your purview?
So, those are, as you point out, they are state waters. But the Kasilof River, unlike the Kenai River, the Kenai is a special management area. Lands and waters have been withdrawn from the public domain, set aside, and assigned to the Division of Parks to manage. That's the Kenai River Special Management Area. That's not the case with the Kasilof. Those are just general state waters. And it is possible to, create restrictions on state waters, but they usually have, there's a couple of reasons would likely need to happen. One of two things that have to happen. One would be a public safety need. The other would be a resource need. Those are the two ways and reasons that we can restrict on state waters, but it's that, that would take, public support, champions in the community to make that, just start.
There's a 3-year cycle with Fish and Game changing regulations, and it's coming up this year. All of the proposals need to be put in by April, and I submitted a proposal to limit motors on the main stem Kasilof, still allow them in slack water and below True Hills, but it wasn't accepted, and I'm in the process of doing that. After this meeting, I'll be outside in the parking lot. If anyone would like to help us with that, I'd like to get you on board. We need to make a show if that's something you're interested in. And again, I appreciate what you're doing. I sure would like to see you do it a lot faster and maybe cheaper.
Thanks. Yes.
I'm trying to be really nice. Is there any way maybe another solution is because we're all worried about the amount of traffic going to the subdivision. Fish and Game on the state webpage has a lottery every year to go out and hunt in special areas, and only so many tags are issued. And if you get one of those, yay hoo, you get to go up to Delta or wherever. Is there any way that you could put in like a lottery to limit? It's open to people, but it limits the amount of traffic that goes in there. You know, if Trujillo was letting in, what was it letting in? 330. Anyway, to some way to make it a lottery, that way you know who's going in and out, who's gonna use it. And do it that way to where it cuts down on everybody just showing up.
So, you know,
Well, we're trying to find solutions to help in our neighborhood, so.
no, I appreciate that. And, you know, from what we've looked into this on the Kenai River, and correct, Brent, when you may have been served on the board at that time when we were looking at limitations and restrictions on the river, on the Kenai River. And the Department of Law basically said there either needs to be a resource purpose for the restriction, or there needs to be a public safety. Those are one of the two things that would be required for restricting use on state lands and waters.
I wonder how we could squeeze public safety.
Yes.
To me, this meeting definitely feels a little bit like a formality, kind of like a checkbox, like, well, we have to have our public meeting. I get that. I know how the state government and government works, but I'm curious, in your opinion, what's still up for grabs? What can we impact and how do we actually do that? Because even today, it's like, well, it sounds like we voice our concerns, our opinions, but I personally don't have a lot of faith it's going to go anywhere or be heard. What's our best course of action to be heard? And also what is still up for grabs? Like I said, the timing, to me, that's crucial because I live right next door. So how can we actually have an impact? Because I mean, for all I know, everything we say here, it's no one's going to listen to a word. So.
Well, I'm listening. You know, I'm the local manager and I'm here. You know, we are, you know, whether you like it or not, you know, we're part of the neighborhood now. And I appreciate all of the neighbors' concerns, and I'm doing my best to try to come up with solutions to try to soften the impact. But I understand where you're coming from, and we want to do our best to be a good neighbor. This meeting wasn't required. You know, this was, you know, my idea to bring people together to share information so that people are aware of what's happening. You know, we're at the point now where, as I mentioned, we're in the 65 to 95% design. So there's not a lot of opportunities to really tweak that. And as for the time frame, it's, you know, we're pretty much locked in unless there's, you know, some unforeseen events that come up with construction and unanticipated issues. So it's not but I don't want you to feel like this is not a check the box. We want to share information. We want our cards to be out on the table so everyone knows what, you know, what the plan is. You guys have a right to know about that. You have a right to voice your concerns, and we have an obligation to and duty to listen and try to come up with solutions.
So would you feel comfortable being, I know you have been a kind of contact or liaison with the neighborhood, but can we reach out to you directly as hopefully a source to be heard? And likewise, like I said, what are some things that are still left to be determined that we could do? Because from what you just said and what you reiterated at the beginning, it's kind of like, hey, it's pretty much this is happening. This is kind of more informational.
Mm-hmm.
So for the things that we still could impact, I think we just want to know our best avenue for making that happen.
You know, what you can influence is the hours of operation. It has not been determined what type of a retrieval system will be in place, so that's an opportunity to comment. I have my business cards on the table. I'll put up my my slide here at the very end, with other contact information, but you guys are welcome to call me or meet with me anytime. I'm, based here in Soldotna, so.
So if I understand this correctly, you're saying, and I came in late, but on the road, because I'm on the road that goes right down to the river. And I lived there when Retrieval was pulling in and out of there at all hours of the night. I listened to the road, the watchboards. But I'm hearing now we're not gonna be able to pay that. Is that correct?
Well, there's never been funding for paying, and so that's something that needs to be identified. That, and actually, that's.
Hasn't it been identified that would really help things if it was?
Yes, it's been identified as a need, but it hasn't, funding hasn't been identified. And so going back to your question about what can you do, that's one area that the neighbors can really, I would encourage them to work with your elected officials, borough leadership in the state to try to figure out a way to fund that.
And if there isn't funding, could you fund something like they do, those plastic things to slow people down across the road? Or
Speed bumps.
What are they called? Speed bumps, yeah.
Speed bumps are an interesting thing. That's possible. But be careful about what you ask for, because you're gonna hear the slapping of the trailers up and, as they go over it.
Forget it then. Forget it. Take that.
Jack, so what I hear from Harry and Tracy Miller, who live, I think they're the only family that live on the road. It's directly across from South Coho Loop that goes on to the cabins, I guess you call the place where Maltese would take out. And Harry and Tracy have told me a number of times that they just hate this guideboat traffic or the drift boat traffic, because people are just in a huge hurry, and so they go screaming by and really frustrating. Their house is right close to that road. So I was curious how to slow people down a little on the roads, and I appreciate the gentleman over here said that he would drive slow on the road, but people don't drive slow on the road is the way it is now. And so I was curious if there could be a limit of maybe 2 trips a day, 2 takes out a day. Is that within the park's power? And that wouldn't keep them from they're doing 3 trips right now, but the 3rd trip would be to Maltese. And so I was just curious, is that something that's within your power or not?
So, yeah, the commercial operators all have state park permits, and we can come up with stipulations on those. So
I think the community would probably really appreciate that one, and it might be a compromise point. And one other question I have is that, Dan here was showing me his map, and apparently there's a fence that goes all the way around this. Is that correct?
They're either a berm, earthen berm with vegetation. Where that's not practical, we'll be considering, or we're considering like a 6-foot privacy fence.
Yeah, I think, I don't live in that community. It seems to me like an earthen berm might be better for wildlife to come and go. I mean, moose sometimes swim across the river, sometimes walk across the ice, and they're gonna end up in that spot. And we don't want them any more confused than they already are. Thanks.
Liz?
Yeah, I have some questions, but I wouldn't sleep well tonight if I didn't at least, throw this out there. That I just feel that my neighborhood is being cast as the next victim of the state of Alaska's strong bias toward those who make their vocation on aquatic vertebrate. My life in the neighborhood does not rely on fish. I like fish, but it does rely on fish. And it still strikes me as robustly unfair and demeaning that after 43 years in the Coal Creek Estate neighborhood, I am now being forced forced to sacrifice the solitude, the beauty, and the personal enjoyment of the Alaska summer months for a public enterprise that was not in place when I bought my property. It was not listed as an exclusion in my covenants. It just has landed in our laps. And I said this before too at another meeting, that it's not, you could probably ask everyone in this room, it is not against commercial fishing in any way, drift or otherwise. I'm defending my neighborhood. I'm defending my way of life. So with that said, I have some questions. We're really concerned about the whole safety issue. And so now the cable thing, as you continue to talk, has me a bit more concerned. You know, I don't know what other options, because I don't know anything about pulling a boat out of the water. So, but what other options are available? I mean, if it isn't some kind of a cable, or what else could it be?
You know, you could, someone brought up the question, you know, like a tractor type pole, when, you know, like down in Deep Creek or Anchor River. Well, these are smaller boats, so you don't need a big tractor, but, you know, perhaps a smaller type, you know, type vehicle that could be used to drag the boats up the bank.
Okay, so where are people gonna park when that lot is full? I mean, where are they gonna go? Where do you see them going? Because you've looked over the site a lot. Where are they gonna go? We've heard airport. I can't believe that's a great idea.
Yeah, when the parking lot's full, it's full, and they'll have to try to figure out another.
They're gonna lock the gate.
Well, that's something that, that's possible. You know, we closed gates in some cases, but that's, you know, there was discussion or there's mention in reference to the shuttle system. You know, and that's something that we can talk with the shuttle operators. Maybe there's an offsite location that could be used.
Okay, if the parking then does become an issue, in my mind, what's gonna happen is and I understand why they're doing it, but they will come into the neighborhood earlier than opening hours in order to get in line to get one of the 47 spaces. Well, I don't want that in my neighborhood either. So that is something I think that we still need to figure out. Because I don't want them lining up in the morning at 4 o'clock. Well, yeah, I like a good parade. I'm in the neighborhood, Brad.
Liz,
It's gonna be running, it's gonna be.
if it's a shuttle system, the shuttle operators are permitted by parks, and we can have stipulations on that. So
Oh.
that's.
I did not know that. Thank you for sharing that. Can I ask you a couple more?
Oh, sure.
I'm sorry, I'll try to hurry. We've been to the state troopers. We've talked to the state troopers. So if we're down in our neighborhood and we're having a problem with trespassing or people parking and we can't, can we call you? Sure, you can call us. You coming? We ain't. Because it's the summertime on the Kenai Peninsula. They said, are you kidding me? We are so swamped that an illegal parking issue is gonna be so far down on our list. Just don't serve them a lemonade, because we're not gonna be down there. And I know that down at the mouth, there are reports, we've all seen it, where there've been police officers and, well, state troopers in particular, that have gone down and ticketed. We know that, but that's not on a sporadic call of this is annoyingly getting out of control. So we're concerned about that. Is there any way we can get a park ranger that would be have more hours available down there? Because I don't know what kind of authority a caretaker is gonna have. Is a caretaker gonna say, you can't do that?
Sure. So, you know, we will, as with any new facility that comes online, it's probably gonna take a little more attention, staff attention in the beginning to kind of figure out use patterns and how to treat things. And it's likely that, you know, we'll likely have a greater presence there with our ranger staff initially, you know, to kind of get things, kind of set the stage and and patterns. That's what I would envision.
Okay, that's good.
But if you wanna, you know, if you want a position directly assigned to the Kasilof area, we used to have a ranger that was assigned to Kasilof. We used to have a dozen rangers between Captain Cook State Park and Ketchmack Bay State Park. A dozen rangers 12 years, or not 12, but 30 years ago. Today we have 8 rangers. And we also manage Prince William Sound and Res Bay. So the trend has been decreasing staff and it's, you know, we're at the point where we need to start looking at ways to get additional staff back to support the units that we want.
Okay.
Go ahead. One more.
I promise. Are there gonna be any more update meetings? I mean, as you progress and you've made some decisions, we've given you feedback. I don't know where that's gonna go, of course, but we've given you ideas and suggestions and feedback. You're gonna make some consequential decisions. Will there be more update meetings?
Absolutely. I can meet, you know, we can meet once a year, we can meet twice a year, whatever would be. And we've the last, previous few years, we've, made an effort to meet with the neighbors, and you guys have, Englands and Burks have done a great job with trying to, you know, get the information out to the residents, and we appreciate that, but, you know, I wouldn't, yeah.
Great.
You just let me know how often you want to meet and we'll.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it.
One question.
Are you gonna charge a fee for use of this area? Yeah, short answer is yes. What that fee is, we haven't determined yet. You know, we've talked about, you know, on one hand, it would be nice. We have a fee at at where you put in, right, up at the boat ramp, the bridge. Right. Maybe we just charge one fee there that covers the takeout as well. That may be something, but short answer is yes, there will be a fee there.
And I'm not trying to beat up the guides or anything, but do the guides pay a higher fee than what the rest of the public would pay? Because they're obviously gonna be using it more than what guy would.
They pay a fee for their commercial park use permit.
How much is that?
And what's our?
You mean it's.
Kasilof?
Are you talking about this?
No, they're talking, so anybody that uses that facility for launching their boats that are a guide, they have to get a permit of $450, and that's every year. And that's just pretty much for the ability to launch and use the park area. And then if they are launching, they can buy a boat launch pass, just like anybody else in the public, and those are $150 per boat. It's not covering one goes to each boat, or they can't move them around from boat to boat. It's $150 per boat. And you have Bill on there too, has another question.
We'll get to Bill here in just a
Okay,
second.
just, you know, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Just really quickly, those fees, are they different for people who are non-residents?
No, we do not have that ability, no.
We used to, they used to be offset, and the Department of Law said, no, they gotta have consistent fees for in-state and out-of-state.
There's a different.
Yeah.
Parks happen to get any money from the $1.7 trillion that just got sent out to everybody? And
No,
Murkowski dipped into some of that?
No.
You don't have any idea?
no, we did not get any of that.
Oh, you didn't get any, because we're all thinking you guys got a boatload of money again.
Yeah.
No pun intended, no pun
What other people have said kind of brought up questions, but that fee, that's not a fee to launch and retrieve boats, because remember, Jack, you were talking about like Eagle Rock doesn't have an annual launch that you can pay. It's a per time.
Eagle, now that's different. Eagle Rock has.
When we were talking to you about the operation of this facility, you're talking about that it'd be the same as like Eagle Rock, where it's not a single pay deal.
That hasn't been determined. At this point, there's option of buying the annual pass. You can launch and retrieve as many times on the Kasilof River.
Right.
That's in place, that, I don't know if that will remain in place when we open up.
Right.
Okay.
Another thing that you just mentioned is the possibility of like a tractor launch that happened at Deep Creek and Anchor Point. And that went from $10 when they first opened up to $80 now. So if that type of thesis or that type of entrepreneur takes over that would be above and beyond their launch fee, I would imagine, or anybody's launch fee.
Yeah, and so, when we're evaluating options, again, just reminder that, where you're putting together a contract, that's, our engineering section is going to put together a request for proposals or contracts, however they do that, to have an engineering company look at the range. And, we're gonna be looking at, safety, efficiency, as well as the cost. I mean, it does us no good if there's a system in place that's slow, inexpensive. So,
I guess lastly, I'd like to piggyback on the safety issue because the fellow that, talked about Jim Trujillo, he used to use Jim Trujillo. Well, Jim Trujillo had, because we've lived down there, talked to Jim a lot. When he limited numbers and stuff, he had complete control of his private land. And I don't foresee the state having that kind of private control that Jim had of his own. Do you see that as a?
We won't have as much, the ability to limit as private sector does. But where we can limit is through, design, engineering, and regulation.
Right, but what I was getting to as far as like he was saying, a guy ripping up the neighborhood, like you had mentioned about going down Coho. Coho is a nice paved straight shot, and then you go down just a little bit of the private subdivision. And that's what we've always been talking about, the end of the road down by, because then you don't go through subdivisions. And when we're talking about safety, I appreciate you going slow, but we've lived there for 40 years and you're one of the few. I'm being real honest. And we were lucky because we live just a little bit to the right of it, but literally the dust flying and yeah, that's just the way it is. You know what I mean? Now Trujillo could limit that because he would hear from us and say, hey, this guy with his blue pickup just about hit a kid. And yet Jim would knock it off right now. The state will not be able to do that. And that's the thing is our kids are all grown up now, but we have a lot of neighborhood kids and it is a small subdivision. This thing winds around in there to get down. You've been down there. I mean, and that's the thing is I would, for that extra half hour, even going down and stuff like that, to get it someplace where it's safe, where it's a straighter shot, be much more, not only convenient, but safer for everybody. This is not a good spot to put it. And I agree, you put a boat in, you need to be able to take a boat out. And we've been in that fix for a long time. Luckily, when you Jim, we could get out of there. But what I'm saying is this small little postage stamp thing is not going to solve anybody's problem. It's going to create a lot of problems. And so I guess my question then referring to that is if the state foresees that if this becomes something that I hope it never does, would it be shut down and go to someplace, some other option? And I know the answer pretty much, probably not.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
Right.
But
I guess lastly then, Jack, that's a follow-up to that is legally, and because there has not been any contracts awarded, money's been given out and the land has been purchased with that money. Legally, with jumping a lot of hoops, of course, can this be redirected?
we've been directed by the legislature.
Right.
Those are our marching orders. The administration, the governor signed off on it. Those are our orders. So for us to change course would require.
Well, I'm not saying from your level on down. I'm saying from someplace up top.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, very unlikely.
Yeah, I understand.
For it to happen. And, we've got about 5 minutes left and, I know we have a few more questions, but is there anybody in the room that hasn't been called on that has a question? Yes, sir. I don't think we've called on you yet.
Haven't. Been in that subdivision for 41 years.
So I was there when the madness of Trujillo was going on, before he got a handle on things. And it was an absolute zoo. People not knowing where they're going, coming screaming down my driveway is obvious it doesn't go to the river. Frantically turning around and trying to get back out. So there's that aspect of it. And then there's the aspect of it of, put up no parking signs. Well, you say you have no jurisdiction in that area. So it's kind of out of your control. I got lots of video footage over the years and over the days of the people parking under the no parking signs down at the mouth of the river where all the dip net action is. With, I personally never seen any enforcement. I worked off that dock for about 30 years or more. And with here's a madhouse. And I personally think that this is going to turn into a launch facility as well. I mean, I just don't see it staying a haul out. I mean, if it was just restricted to that, and that's what it would be, that wouldn't be as bad. But I don't believe for a minute that it's going to continue to be just a haul out. And it's just a matter of administrations and changing times or whatever. And then that neighborhood is really going to go to hell. And I know you probably don't have any answer as far as the no parking, and once it's out off that land, you have no jurisdiction. And this doesn't settle very well with me as from seeing what happened in that neighborhood before Jim finally got sick of all the BS and the people screaming up and down. And after he got a hold of things, it wasn't too bad. But I guess that's more of a statement than a question. That's all I got.
Okay, thanks. We've got time for, I'll take one more question. You've been very patient, and then I'll get to Bill.
Along the state parks have gone to private management firms. Is there what's your take on that?
My take is, I believe we have better management when we are doing it ourselves and with our own employees. That's not to say we have some really good examples in place with private operators. But really the private operators are more focused on, maximizing revenue. They're not necessarily as concerned about maintaining the facilities. We have more of an interest in the longevity of our facilities.
But so you would say that is probably not in the future turned over to private management?
I don't anticipate that, but a lot will determine on, what this retrieval mechanism, if we have end up with a cable pull system, just like they're using down at the cabins, then I doubt we would have an operator. If we ended up with a electric motor with a, winch and cable, we can't have the public using that. So would need to be an operator. So, and that would probably be through essentially a concession contract.
Right.
Yeah. The last question here, Bill, we'll go back to you on Teams.
Okay, I appreciate that. Hey, it's just a real quick question. So I was curious, is Doug, the Senator Stevens representative, is he still on? If he is, the question is actually for him.
Hey, Doug Gardner.
I'm on the phone. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Doug, this is Bill Hudson. Hey, I have a question for you. You offered some assistance to Jack when it comes to funding and things like that. I'm curious, you've heard the concerns around safety for the people that live in the subdivision. Is there any way you can provide some support to help deal with that? Either some grease to the system, some funding or something like that to get the roads paved or whatever it is. Is it possible you can help us with that?
Well, I didn't offer assistance. My question was whether Jack and ultimately Parks and DNR were going to have to come back to the legislature for more money. And I think that the answer that Jack gave me was Not sure. It's going to have, the project's going to have an annual operating budget. And also the project's going to have some kind of, some additional expenses that we don't know about. And I guess I will say that my questions aren't necessarily what Senator Stevens has in mind. I'm just trying to attend the meeting to try and gather information. I'm not trying to assist or hurt anybody here. But one of the concerns that the state has, and it's been raised at this meeting, is if you build a project, it's got to be funded over the course of the next X number of years. It's like building a house. You got to put a roof on it in 10 or 20 years or whatever. So what I'm trying to understand is, how much does that cost? What is the true cost of the project? The true cost of the project to the state in capital dollars has been estimated by DNR. The question that I was trying to propose to Jack, and I'm not sure he has that information, is how much is it going to cost every year to run this? And so, I mean, I don't know if that's an answer for your question, but I'm trying to understand pricing and how much it costs. And I do think an additional cost is the risk management that goes into maintaining a cable system to pull the boats out. And now I'm hearing that there's a possibility that there would be a vendor involved. How does that come out of? And I guess I would ask that question of you, Jack. If there is a vendor, question number one, if there is a vendor, does that come out of the fees that are paid for the project? Or do you have to come back to the legislature every year and ask for an appropriation? I guess number two is, has there been an assessment about what the risks are in terms of operating this? I thought I heard that there weren't any other cable systems exactly like this. I guess I'd like to ask that question. But to the person that asked me about my questions, no, I'm not trying to change the project one way or the other, but I do think it's important that the state pencil out how much this is costing. And so that was the nature of my question. And if I didn't answer your question, tell me and I'll try harder.
No, I just wanted to get your input, because there is a safety concern for all the people in and around the subdivision. And it appears it's going to have to come from funding from someplace else. And you are the only one on the line that has purse strings. So I was just kind of curious how that was all going to play out. Thank you.
I don't have purse strings. The legislature does, but it is my job as staff to try and gather as much information so that our side of the aisle has, as much financial information as possible. And I do want to end this by saying thank you, Jack, for going over and beyond. Not everybody probably agreed with everything you said, but thanks for being available so late in the evening. Anyway, if you could answer my follow-ups, that'd be great.
Sure, Doug. So as we get closer to, have a better understanding of what the final design looks like, we will be able to, kind of drill down on the operating costs. Going back to the two state capital CIPs that were funded, it was reading through the notes and the justification and details. Operating costs were referenced as, but were referenced in there, in the need to, that this funding was just for facility construction, not operating costs. As for a private vendor, I don't want to leave this meeting with people running out and saying, oh, well, the state's going to issue a contract to have an operator run the site. We're not there. We could be there, but again, it just depends on what the final design is like. In areas where we do have private operators, there's no subsidy by the state We just issue we go through a competitive process to award a contract. It can either be a concession contract or we can award a competitive park use permit. But that gives a private operator the ability to run the site for us and collect fees. So the fees that are generated on site would pay for that service. So with that, Pam, can you put the slide on, that last final slide with contact information? This has my contact info as well as
Where did we go?
about
Oh, the bottom one?
Eh,
No, that's
no.
Kenai River. Where'd we go here?
there you go.
Oh, that's the guy that we go.
And like contact business cards on the table, please feel free to take one of those. One thing I want to point out is this project website. This is on the state park, the state of Alaska website. If you go to DNR state parks, you can pull up, go to the Kenai area and oops.
I'm gonna go to share so everybody can see it.
Okay.
That's all I was doing. I had unshared already.
Jack, do you have an engineered drawing of the actual boat ramp at all?
No, that's detail remains to be determined. We are looking at a design that can be removed, just given the seasonal nature of the property. You know, we are looking at, you know, pretty basic type system, just like, you know, Jim Trujillo had on the property that can be removed at the end of the season.
Have you come up with cost estimate for this project?
It's
Considering in the money that you got to work with?
yeah, we have 2.5 million to work with remaining, and the engineer's estimate falls within that.
And what if it doesn't?
If it doesn't, then we'll have to look at our options. We can either reduce the scope of work, or we can look for additional funding.
Is that why the phase 2 is in the project?
So the phase 2 is for, you know, the caretaker cabin and the historical structure. That's something that we just haven't had funding for with the money that we've had, but that's a need that we recognize.
So you're putting this project out there, this is a point, but you really don't have probably enough money to do the whole thing.
Well, we know there's work to be done in the historical cabin as well as, you know, long-term we want a caretaker.
Do you need Army Corps permit for that?
No, we've looked into that. We've reached out to the Corps for wetland determination and yeah.
So I just want to make a real quick comment to the guides. You know, it seems like it's the guides versus the homeowners, and really the guides need to be aware that this is a public facility, and so it's not going to be like what it has been all along. You're going to be in competition with the public that wants to use that because the public has paid for that. So just so you know, what you have now, it's not going to be the same. It's going to change because you're going to be fighting for those 47 spots to get a parking place so that you can drift. So just so that you're aware of that. It's not going to be just your guide area. You're going to be competing with the public.
I can give you an answer on that if you'd like it.
Well, you know what, guys, I promised we'd be done at 7:30 and it's 7:40 now. So we're going to end the meeting. And please, feel free if you have questions, please contact me. Thanks, Jack. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it.
Thank you.